Happy New Year, guys. Welcome to 2022, and I hope we all had a wonderful 2021. Today's series will be focused on mistakes made by business analysts during interviews. Number one on our list today would be the STAR technique. So, I've been a part of many sort of interview sessions when we've been trying to recruit new business analysts, sometimes also testers, members of the technology delivery team in many organizations. And I'll say one skill that many people focusing obviously on business analysts leave out during the interview process is not sticking to an actual technique when they are responding or answering questions. So my advice has always been sort of have the STAR technique in your mind, in the back of your mind, whenever you're answering any questions. So basic questions like tell us about yourself, tell us about your most recent role, uh, what are your business analysis skills, what sort of projects have you worked on? Whatever the question is, I would advise that you always have the STAR technique in the back of your mind and use that as a basis to actually answer any questions that are posed to you during the interview process. So what's the STAR technique? The STAR technique is basically a method of answering questions that is comprised of 4 steps. So basically it's an acronym and it means sort of situation, task, action, and results. So for any question that is posed to you, so take for example, if I ask you, tell us about your most recent role as a business analyst and what you actually did, you have to construct that and answer it in this format. So you describe the situation. So yes, my most recent role was over the last 2 years, or I'm currently working in a role as a business analyst. And then what is the task? So you start to sort of talk about different tasks that you worked on as a business analyst. What was the goal? So, what sort of projects did you work on? What was the actual goal of the project? What was your role within that project? So, you start to see that your storyline or your story would flow following this format. And then, what was the action? So, I implemented an electronic patient record, for example, or I worked with a team of external vendors, internal developers, testers that help to implement and introduce a new electronic patient record for a particular hospital I was working for. What was the actual action that you did? That's sort of the next a part of this acronym. So, as part of the implementation team, I did this, this, and this. So, I gathered the requirements, I validated the requirements, I developed models, wireframes. You basically highlight the action that you actually took to contribute to the actual process. What was the actual result? So you then conclude with this particular project I worked on was successful because we actually delivered this EPR system within 3 months, within 2 months, whatever the scenario is. So remember, describe the situation when it took place, task, what was the actual goal of the endeavor that you were working on, what was the actual action that you took individually to contribute to the actual goal, and what was the actual final result of that project or that task that you're working on. So if you have this acronym in the back of your mind whenever you're answering any questions, regardless of even if you're not a business analyst, a tester, whoever you are, that structure would always help you connect with the people actually interviewing you or conducting your interview. So many times you're part of a panel and people are answering questions and there's no sort of logic to it. It's difficult to follow, you're not really fully grasping what they're saying. And sometimes it makes you look like you're not really professional and you're not able to pass across your points or relay your story over. So remember, we're all human beings, we all like a captivating story. So if you're able to structure your story in a way that helps people sort of relate and can, like, we're all working within the industry. So if I'm part of a panel and I'm already a business analyst and you're telling me a story and I can't relate to it because it's all over the place, it wouldn't help your case. So remember the STAR technique, which is situation, task, action, and result, is always a good structure that you could have when you are actually answering any question. I hope that was helpful. Um, Number two, really, for me, is sort of having attention to detail and getting some background information about the organization that you are currently interviewing for or with. So many times, part of panels as well, you ask a general question about the organization, that's usually on the website, and you realize that people haven't taken 5, 10 minutes before the interview to even just go through the website or read the news, try to understand where the organization is actually going. So I think investing that time is really important. Investing the time just before the interview to get some background knowledge about the organization is really, really useful. And sometimes, many times actually, no one is going to ask any question, basic question about the organization, but sometimes it's just a way to start off a conversation or just to check that you're actually detailed or interested in the organization. And it might be that question that might give you an edge over other applicants. So that's my number two. It's taking the extra time to do a bit of research about the organization, read any reports, just try to understand where the organization is going or the department within the organization is going as a whole. And that usually is quite helpful as well. The third one I'll say is try and read a bit about your panel. So many times I know you get invited for an interview. There's a panel. Look into their profiles. Try and put a face to the actual name that's going to actually interview you. And sometimes it just helps you sort of calm down because you realize that they're normal people like you, and it's very, very, very important to just sort of build that relationship just by looking at people's profiles, understanding what their backgrounds are, and then that might give you a bit of an insight into who the individual is that's going to actually be interviewing you. The fourth sort of mistake I would say that business analysts make when they're actually taking part in interviews is, and I've seen this a few times, is people, especially now that we're working mostly remotely, most interviews are conducted remotely, is that some candidates would have like piece of paper or book or whatever it is sort of right beside them when taking part in an interview. And then I've seen in one case where a question has been thrown to the candidate, and the candidates, you could actually hear them shuffling through a book. Please don't make that mistake. It makes you look very unprofessional. It makes you look like you are trying to cheat. So I advise that stay away from having any sort of books, any materials around you, and just try and speak from the heart, try and speak from experience, rather than trying to quickly run back to a textbook to relay your understanding of a particular question. Number five is prepare, prepare, prepare. So before any interview, obviously we mentioned the STAR technique, which is before the interview. But for you to get the STAR technique correct, always ensure that you sort of prepare your stories. So even if you're a seasoned business analyst or you're just a junior business analyst, you always have to have a story. So usually the question that you know you're most likely going to get thrown at you is, can you tell us a bit about yourself? Can you tell us about your experience? So that usually is a basic question across all interviews I've been part of. People want to break ice, want to uh, get a sense of who you are, what kind of experiences you had. So that usually is the first question. So you know that you're going to get asked that question at some point. So why not prepare? Put together a few, two or three stories where that would actually push you in a positive light. Using the STAR technique, you highlight the situation within your current role or your previous roles, highlight specific projects that would be relatable to the actual interviewers, and then tell those stories. Tell us what you did, how you did it, the techniques that you used, but without preparing and writing down your stories, it'll be difficult when you actually get to the interview. So prepare, write down actual stories, 2 or 3 stories that you'll be able, that will capture your essence as a business analyst so that everyone can fully understand what your skills are, what your experience is within 5-10 minutes. So build stories for all the questions that you might get asked during the interview. When as part of preparation as well, go on the internet. There's free resources everywhere telling you the sort of questions that you might get pushed to you. Prepare using the STAR technique. Write it down, and everything, like I said, build it around stories because people are more interested when you're able to tell a captivating and interesting story. So build a story that people would love to hear. So it's one thing being experienced and being just a bit cocky, like you're really experienced, but it's another thing being able to structure your story. And when you're telling the story, people are able to, like I said, relate. I can ask you questions, and then you can have a chat because that's what everybody from both sides are usually a bit nervous. So if you're telling stories and you've prepared well enough before the interview, your stories will be very captivating and would leave everybody intrigued. Those for me are sort of the 5 sort of pointers or mistakes business analysts make during interviews. So I would say again, for me, the 2 most important ones would be not preparing enough, not using the STAR technique during the actual interviews, and not having structured stories about your experiences to be able to explain your strengths to the actual panel. Thank you very much, guys, and I hope everyone has a wonderful 2022. I wish you all the best. Any queries, any questions, hit me in the on the email. Don't forget to like, subscribe. All the best, guys.